The H1B Guy here, and today, the H1B Guy news for the week ending January 8th, 2021. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube and like this video so that I can continue to produce more content like this for you. I also wanted to mention the H1B Guy offers a variety of consulting services. I help businesses and individuals solve complex work authorization issues and the recruitment process while bringing awareness to employment based immigration benefits. If I can help you, please reach out. I'd love to hear how. Today's news is brought to you by RecruiterNetworks.com, the smart solution for digital perm ads since 2001. Well, what a week. From the Senate runoffs here in the state of Georgia to the terroristic activities that occurred on Wednesday, we have seen change and turmoil all within the span of 24 hours. But now, the news. January 6th, 2021. In an article written by George Anders for LinkedIn Workforce Insights titled, "In Stormy Times, These 15 U.S. Cities Make Jobs Happen." Quote, "What does it take for a city to become a jobs magnet?" A new study by LinkedIn's Economic Graph team looks at labor market conditions in 182 U.S. metro areas for 2020 and highlights 15 standouts in the face of a chaotic economy. The analysis focuses on two key measures adjusted for demographic size. The first measure is the average volume of job postings on LinkedIn. The second is the quantity of people in each area getting hired, as tracked by updates to their LinkedIn profiles. As the table below shows, the top 15 cities span the breadth of the country. They include well known coastal leaders such as Seattle, San Francisco, Boston, and Washington, D.C., as well as a flurry of often overlooked achievers in the middle of the country. The latter group includes Austin, Nashville, Tennessee, Madison, Wisconsin, and Provo, Utah. An unusual city to city revolving door of talent has taken hold. A highly visible group of people have left high cost cities such as San Francisco and New York in favor of more affordable, less disrupted, smaller locales, as the September 2020 edition of Workforce Report documents. Yet, at the same time, some of these big cities haven't lost their ability to keep making jobs happen, tapping into either the optimism of new arrivals or the willingness of existing residents to switch jobs. It's all part of the gritty, uneven national recovery in the latter part of 2020, which reduced the jobless rate to 6.7% in November. For top rating Seattle, being Amazon's hometown means a nonstop flow of additional jobs, many of them in tech. The Seattle area also gets a lift from the presence of tech companies including Microsoft, which owns LinkedIn, Expedia, Salesforce's Tableau unit, and sizable outposts for Google, Facebook, and other tech leaders. The fourth ranked San Francisco Bay Area has seen its tech sector thrive and expand too, as the rise of remote work creates more demand for digital tools that keep us all semi connected no matter what. Companies such as Apple and Facebook each have more than 1,000 job openings listed on LinkedIn that are at or near the Bay Area headquarters. Second ranked Austin is taking a different track, becoming a prime destination for out of area companies wanting to build up their regional presence or move their headquarters. What works consistently for Austin can be seen more intermittently in other cities, such as eighth ranked Nashville. It stands to gain 100 jobs from the arrival of Yoshi, a former Silicon Valley company that brings field techs to people's cars for on the spot servicing. An especially rich illustration of industrial diversity comes from 10th ranked Madison, Wisconsin, where word hiring announcements lately have come from the likes of grocery stores, trailer markers, or trailer makers, and cutting edge developers for tests for COVID 19. It's a similar story in 5th ranked Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, or 6th ranked Denver. In both those locations, regional economists are calling out industries as diverse as education, professional services, transportation, leisure, and hospitality as ones that can contribute to an economic upturn this year. So I wanted to read a good bit of this article because I think it provides a lot of insight into what's going on in the jobs and how they're moving. You may be asking, what does this have to do with H-1B visas or employment-based benefits? As I've previously covered on the H-1B Guy reviews, H-1B workers by geographic area, and also on the H-1B Guy explores tech talent in the US and Canada in 2020, we see a common theme from this article today with several of the expected and familiar names. But today's article has a few major metro areas that are noticeably absent, including New York, Atlanta, Dallas, Miami, and Phoenix. I personally found it very surprising to see Washington, D.C., Nashville, Tennessee, Richmond, Virginia, Madison, Wisconsin, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Charlotte, North Carolina, Provo, Utah, and Pittsburgh ahead of the aforementioned major metro areas that were absent. Is this a sign that more mid-tier metro areas with a population of 5 million or less people is becoming an attractive destination for companies and their employees? Is this insight into which cities and states are offering incentives and have the available human capital to meet current and future demands? If and when there is a mass return to on site office work, will this list look similar? Quite possibly, as the digital workforce will only continue to grow. I can tell you this, RTP, Nashville, Madison, and Charlotte, having made efforts over the last decade to become a vibrant and happening place, you can see some of those efforts paying off here. Is it a coincidence that they're surviving this so-called storm? I don't think so. January 7th, 2021. In an article written by Rajiv S. Khanna for the Economic Times titled, This Year's H-1B Lottery, the Trump Legacy of Chaos Must End. Quote, the H-1B filing season is upon us, expected to begin on March 1st, 2021. The U.S. employers are concerned with the USCIS change the lottery system. For this year, fiscal 2021 through 2022, the USCIS has attempted to change the lottery selection process to favor the highest paid employees first. That change is embodied in a proposed regulation, which can be published as a final rule anytime. We expect and hope that regulation will not survive force of laws, the facts, and the Democrats' resurgent power in the presidency and Congress. This specific effort, however, is clearly neither permitted by the laws nor by the facts. This proposed drastic policy shift will almost certainly be found unattainable by the courts, who have in various contexts held that the Trump administration cannot usurp the lawmaking power of Congress. In formulating laws, Congress carefully balances various priorities, as here, the need for U.S. businesses, schools, universities, and healthcare entities to recruit and retain talent against the need to protect qualified U.S. workers. This regulation should not be finalized, even though its regulatory process is complete. Mr. Biden will get sworn into his office as president on January 20, 2021. We can reasonably expect that USCIS will not, this close to a changeover, regulatorily impose old Trump policies on a new administration. If the USCIS does implement the regulations, both Congress and courts are likely to effect reversal. The Congress can reverse any regulation within 60 days of passage through a joint resolution of the two chambers of the Congress. Note that the Democrats now have a slim majority in both the chambers, so such a resolution should be relatively easy to secure. The regulation is also wide open to legal challenge in the courts because it far exceeds the statutory scheme conceived by the Congress and the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act. First of all, what a title. This article paints another picture, forewarning us of another lawsuit as it relates to President Trump's administration's efforts to rewrite the H-1B visa, specifically the HCAP lottery here. Going as far to call for regulation to not be finalized, even though the regulatory process is complete, is a very bold request from Mr. Khanna, quickly followed by an assumption that was severely off target, as we'll see in the next article, but also covering his tracks to say that Congress will move to reverse this rule if implemented because the Democrats now have control of both chambers. Does this rule exceed the statutory scheme from the INA? Most likely, but let's ask an honest question. Is random selection or selection based on compensation levels better for the individuals and the employers? Which gives American workers more protections? That answer is easy: electronic wage selection. In fact, H1B visa holders that I know support this rule. And later that day, January 7th, 2021, USCIS news release titled USCIS Modifies H1B Selection Process to Prioritize Wages. Quote, rule expected to protect the American interests of American workers. Washington. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has announced a final rule that will modify H1B cap selection process, amend current lottery procedures, and prioritize wages to protect the economic interests of U.S. workers and better ensure that the most highly skilled foreign workers benefit from the temporary employment program. Modifying the H-1B cap selection process will incentivize employers to offer higher salaries and/or petition for higher skilled positions, and establish a more certain path for businesses to achieve personnel needs and remain globally competitive. The H-1B temporary visa program has been exploited and abused by employers primarily seeking to fill entry-level positions and reduce overall business costs, said USCIS Deputy Director for Policy Joseph Edlow. The current H-1B random selection process makes it difficult for businesses to plan their hiring, fails to leverage the program to compete for the best and brightest international workforce, and has predominantly resulted in the annual influx of foreign labor placed in low-wage positions at the expense of U.S. workers. This effort will only affect H-1B registrations or petitions if the registration process is suspended, submitted by prospective petitioners seeking to file H-1B cap subject petitions. It will be implemented for both the H-1B regular cap and the H-1B advanced degree exemption, but it will not change the order of selection between the two as established by the H-1B registration final rule. The final rule will be effective 60 days after its publication in the Federal Register. DHS previously published a notice of proposed rulemaking on November 2nd, 2020, and carefully considered the public comments received before deciding to publish the proposed regulations as a final rule. Well, it's a good thing that Rajiv S. Khanna covered his assumption that this would not go into effect by stating Congress will act now once they have both controls of the chambers. Very interesting, because to think that the current administration was going to sit back and do nothing as it relates to the H-1B visa and temporary foreign workers in general on their way out the door was a severe miscalculation. I'm very interested to see how this is going to be rolled out. As the previous article stated, thousands of petitions are currently being prepared and ready to be filed for the upcoming April 1st opening. Last year's HCAP lottery was the first to move to electronic filing. With this year's also being electronic and the removal of the random selection process, this should make the overall selection process much faster. If this remains a rule, I would imagine most petitions will be selected and notified in early to mid-May. Of course, I'll be monitoring this situation, and as we've seen, things could completely change in 3 weeks. For the full post on the H1B Guy news for the week ending January 8th, 2021, please check out the H1BGuy.com. And while you're there, please subscribe to the H1BGuy.com so that you can receive the H1B Guy Digest, which will be released for the first time next week. And a reminder that today's news was brought to you by RecruiterNetworks.com, the smart solution for digital perm ads since 2001. This national job board network provides recruitment websites in 1,024 major U.S. metro areas. Each local job board is its own portal and is a low-cost resource for immigration recruitment ads for all industries and professions with a flat price of $225 per ad, regardless of which city you choose. RecruiterNetworks.com has been the #1 place for immigration attorneys, immigration ad agencies, and employers to meet the DOL requirements for the digital portion of the perm advertisement rules. RecruiterNetworks.com. Tell them the H1B guy sent you. If you've made it this far, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to watch my content. I really appreciate your support. If you can like this video Please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube and click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we post new content here to this channel or go live. The H1B Guy, your global source for all things H1B.